Tim Albright with AVNation at InfoComm 2021. Dan Feldstein, new President and CEO of Crestron. How are you, sir?
Very good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you in person. We're in Orlando, you know. This is, I say new President and CEO. You are not new, though, to Crestron. You have, I'm going to say grown up, that sounds a little condescending, but you have, your work life has been in Crestron. Your dad, George, was the founder of the company. Talk for a second about kind of what this means to you personally to take over a company that not only your father founded, but put so much energy and life into.
Well, first, grow up with Crestron is actually very accurate.
Okay.
We have the same birth year.
There we go.
So my entire life, every memory in my life, when I look back, Crestron is there. Crestron is part of that. Every summer job was at Crestron. Every time I needed to do a project, we went and needed to use the facilities and tools of Crestron. So it is not just a place I work or worked. It is truly part of my life. And I started full time in '94 when I graduated college. And interestingly enough, the recruiter at my college had suggested that I work somewhere else to get some other experience. My father threatened to break my legs, so I chose to go directly to work for Crestron.
Okay, time out for a second. So, I've never heard that story, and every interaction I had with your father was the most genteel man, right? And I'm about 5'10-ish, 5'11", and so he was probably what, 5 inches shorter than me?
No, he was about
5'9".
At his peak was about 5'10",
Okay,
5'11".
all right.
You know.
And he that is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't to you at the time, but that is fantastic.
I mean, I think he was joking.
Did he have a bat in his hand?
No, he didn't.
Okay, well then yeah, maybe he was joking.
But I wasn't willing to go out and put a resume out
no.
there. So, so I've spent my entire life, my entire career at Crestron, and the nice thing about that is we've been growing, and it's just such a vastly changing business and an industry. So I've had a lifetime of business experiences while staying in the same place, and that meant starting in engineering, moving into more of an operations role, working on developing our SAP system and implementing that, which allowed me to touch every aspect of the business, from facilities to accounting to order entry. So I've been in the business. I've been around. I've been working with all the people that are currently the leaders in our organization for many years. Yeah. The only thing is I wasn't out front. I wasn't the face of the company. But in fact, I've been to every InfoComm except 2 since '94.
Wow.
So I've been here.
You have indeed. Randy Klein took over as president and CEO when your father passed away. This announcement was made, I'm going to get the actual date wrong, but about two to 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. After a pandemic, right, after a pretty rough time for the industry. Why make this adjustment now? Why make this change now? And why is it you?
Well, now that really is, it was Randy's decision to decide to move on. He felt largely it was because of where the company was. So while we had come through this pandemic, while it was this difficult time, we had a lot of pieces in place, and he had worked very hard over the last few years to make sure that we had a lot of very strong pieces in place through our sales organization, through our marketing departments, through our engineering departments and manufacturing, and customer support. So he felt the company was in a very good position, a very stable position, and probably at a point where I couldn't mess it up too badly.
I appreciate that, but I don't think that you're going to mess it up.
Well, to the second half of your question, the why me?
Yeah.
Because it was time, and I'm ready. I'm ready for this challenge. I'm ready for this next chapter in my career at Crestron. And as I mentioned before, Crestron is part of who I am. It's part of my life. So it's not about why me, it's who else.
Yeah. I have a couple of dear friends. George Tucker, you and I were talking about before we started recording. Sure. Dear friend of mine used to work for Crestron. Steve Greenblatt, who hosts our programming and automation shows, State of Control, worked for Crestron. He's known you for 30 years.
Yes.
Richie Fregosa, who is a residential programmer by and large, but he's out of San Francisco, speaks highly of you. And one of the things I want to kind of point out, and this is a weird little turn here, one of the things that both Greenblatt and Rich told me was about something that you had a hand in that sounds kind of geeky and weird, but stick with me for a second. You wrote, because your degree is in computer science, computer systems engineering. I even wrote it down and got it wrong. But you were responsible for the viewport
Yes.
part of Toolbox. Now, really quickly,
Viewport was the predecessor of Toolbox.
I'm a horrible Crestron programmer, but I can do it, right? So I'm familiar with the interface. And you had put Easter eggs. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
In Viewport. Talk about like why even go that far? And it was games, right? It was simple, 8-bit, 16-bit games. But you've been here that long to where you were able to do that, and you understand that side of the AV industry. You understand that somewhat geeky, right, nerdy culture of what makes us tick.
Right, and I mean the question of why I did it. Well, I was bored one weekend, and
because you could.
Because I could. It was the intellectual challenge of it to try to do it. The first game I wrote was the Snake game,
Yep.
and to date it was because that was what was on I believe the Nokia 6162 phone or whatever model it was, that was what we called an app, I guess, back in those days. So. And it was a fun little game, and I thought, let me see if I can program this and make it. And I sat there for hours on weekends, sitting there playing it and going through every permutation and figuring out, when you hit the dot, it extends, and then it goes a little faster, and kind of reverse engineering the functionality of the game and making a PC version of it. And then I said, okay, now I made this PC version of it, basically just for fun. What do I do with it? So I said, let me just embed it in Viewport.
That is.
So that's really what. And then I added this other kind of matching game thing, and then I added Tetris.
Okay.
Because I was bored. Which I then later I ported Tetris to when we came out with the X-Gen processor, which had Simple Plus as a component to exercise the power of Simple Plus and the power of our TPS touch panels at the time. I ported it over and could play it on a touch panel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
See, that's awesome. I love that. When you talk to dealers, when you go around the country, you talk on teams or whatever. Why should they kind of be excited about this change? Why should they be excited about the future of Crestron now?
Well, I think the key to that goes back to the why me.
Yeah.
And it's because I've been here, because I'm going to be a stable, continuing force for Crestron. We're not bringing in some outside person who has some crazy ideas of what Crestron should be or what it shouldn't be. I've been here. I lived in the industry. I know our dealers. I know what their needs are. I know their challenges. And I'm committed to continuing down the path to support them and to work with them and to keep Crestron going the way we've been going. So I think that's one of the key factors, and hopefully I'm young enough. I plan to be doing this for a very long time, and that should be a strong stabilizing factor for them to feel confident that they can stick with Crestron for their future and for years to come.
All right, very good. And you're incredibly young. You and I are roughly the same age. So, talk about we covered this. We touched on this just briefly, but. COVID and the pandemic, and I mentioned the fact that you and I are sitting here in Orlando, and it is a smaller InfoComm, right? Let's not mince words here. It is a smaller. There are fewer exhibitors than there was 6 months ago. Certainly, there were probably fewer attendees than there would have been 6 months ago. but this is the first North American commercial AV show of its size since the pandemic happened. When the world locked down in March-ish of 2020, you guys certainly, you had a lot of remote workers at that time. You sent everybody home, but you also continued to innovate, and you started bringing out products for working from home. Now, whether or not you had those in the works, you guys just said, hey, let's spend a weekend and do this. I have no idea. But then, we start getting back into this, and as we're getting back into this, now we're faced with some other challenges, including chip shortages, and that leads to supply chain issues, and where you've got the industry trying to come back, right? Economically, right? Sales are increasing. But now we've got some other challenges from COVID. Talk for a second about how Crestron was able to overcome what happened last year, and how you guys are able to help the dealers as they're coming out of it, right? And talking with their clients.
Right, so to your point about continuing innovation, I made the decision early on in the pandemic, even though we had to send everybody home, that we were not going to lay anybody off. So we had no layoffs, no furloughs. We kept everybody working, and we continued our investment in R&D and in innovation. So what that allowed us to do, and I give all the credit to our R&D team, which was able to very quickly pivot and be able to now collaborate and work together using remote tools, primarily Teams, and they were able to basically become so efficient working remotely that we were able to keep on schedule for pretty much our entire product roadmap. And that's going to allow us, and these are products that could take 2-3 years to develop, but now we put in a lot of that groundwork, so we didn't lose all that time. So now what it's going to allow us to do is to continue to bring out new products over the next several years, because we have them in the pipeline. We have that continuous flow of innovation and new products that we were able to keep going. And that's the biggest way we're going to be able to help our dealer network, is because we're going to continue to be providing them with the latest technology, the latest products, so that they have what they need to service their customers. And from the supply chain point of view, it's unfortunately it's a global problem, and we're doing our best to manage it. We're getting very inconsistent answers from our suppliers and our chip manufacturers, but we're doing our best to manage that situation, and every bit of creativity we have and every bit of power we have to try to mitigate what that impact will be on our customers. And we're confident that working with our customers, we'll get through this together.
Yeah, absolutely. We were chatting about what UC again before we started, and UC is one of those areas, Unified Communications, UCC, Unified Communications and Collaboration. Crestron has made a pretty significant investment in that platform, in that line. There are some dealers who will look at that as almost like a challenge, right? Almost like, well, now you're going, through distribution or whatever, through other things. Talk for a second about why it matters that Crestron is going and serving the Unified Communications line, but also how that directly impacts and directly helps the Pro AV dealer.
Right. Well, the UC aspect, and we've seen this coming for a long time, but all that's been accelerated to a whole nother level post-COVID. We've seen the value of UC in the room as sort of the next development of meeting technology. Teams is going to become, Zoom and all those other platforms are going to become more and more ubiquitous. They're going to be everywhere. And you're going to need to balance that experience between the individual laptop and the room with 4 or 5 people in it, or 20 or 30 people in it. And balance how all of that interacts and all that works together. So we feel, as part of the conference room, which is a space we've pretty much owned for decades, that's the next evolution of the conference room. So we had to be there because that's what the conference room becomes. Now, the importance for us to be there, as opposed to a lot of these other products that are sold just through distribution, people buy them, they screw it to the wall, and they're done. Yeah. By buying it from Crestron, it integrates with our entire ecosystem and the entire Crestron platform. And now you bring in the ability to integrate that with your room scheduling, integrate it with your shades and your lights and room control and your audio and video distribution throughout the space. It also, besides handling the smaller conference rooms, well, what happens when you're in a large meeting space and you still want to be able to have those virtual or hybrid meetings? We can now accommodate those large custom spaces that have very special needs, but also need that hybrid element to them. And that's something that you're not going to really get from some of the traditional UC hardware platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, I do want to talk about one thing, has nothing to do with you and me here. Fred Bargetzi, longtime CTO of Crestron, passed away unfortunately. He is this week actually, with Avixen InfoComm, is being given the Lifetime Achievement Award. Talk for a second about Fred's impact, certainly on Crestron, right? But also in this industry, and how he's kind of helped shape it over his career.
Well, first, I really want to thank Avixa for honoring Fred this way. I can't think of another person who deserves it more than him. Just a terrific guy, and just such a horrible tragedy that his life was cut so short. But yeah, it certainly will forever be missed by me and many others at Crestron and throughout the whole industry. And some of that ties into why. Well, what was his impact? And his impact is interesting. Fred, he was a guy, he had incredible conviction, incredible drive, and incredible passion. Yeah. And his passion, you could see it. Have a technology conversation with Fred. Anybody who comes out of it ready to run through a wall. Yeah. He was so passionate about his ideas and about the direction of the industry, what our new product development cycle was, that you couldn't help but get excited along with him for it. And then he had the drive he worked harder than anybody I knew. First one there in the morning, last one there at night, and that drive is what helped him to execute on some of that passion. And his conviction, if he really felt strongly about an idea, about a product, he wouldn't let any obstacle stand in his way. And we had a lot of debates back in the day. Randy, Fred, my father, and I, we used to go to lunch almost every day together, and my father and Fred would have some knockdown, drag-out battles at lunch sometimes, debating over technology and new products and a direction, and often they were half a degree off of each other, but that was still an argument. Yeah. But Fred would not let it go. He would push and say, I feel strongly it should be this way, we need to do this. A perfect example is digital media. Mm-hmm. And talk about impact on the industry. He was really the driving force, saying the world is going digital. This HDMI thing is not just something for the home. This is real, it's going to affect the commercial industry, and we need to be on top of it. And he made his case, he pushed for it, and once he convinced all of us of that, we were fully on board with it. And that was perfect example of another crisis that turned into opportunity. That was the 2008-2009 housing crisis, where everybody was laying off engineers. Revenue had cut in half from what it normally had at points. And we kind of doubled down and we continued our product development with the digital media line. And then a year or two later, we were launching our DM line of products, which I like to think helped revolutionize the entire AV industry and change the way we look at how we move audio and video around in a facility.
In a very crucial time, because around that time, and I'm sure you remember this, is when they started talking about the analog sunset, right? And getting that now. Obviously, I was a tech manager at that time, so that it was conversations that we were having at our college, and getting IT to understand that in 4, 5, 6 years, the computers that we're buying now are going to be unusable, right? And so
Right.
having that, absolutely, that leadership was crucial.
Yeah, and the other thing that Fred did, which I'm very thankful for, maybe a little bit selfishly, is some of that passion, some of that drive. He built an incredible team in our R&D, as part of our R&D team, our product team. That was his idea, to help build that team up and basically go from when we were a smaller company where either my father or Fred had all the ideas to looking at it as we need a team approach to this. We can't just rely on one person to think up everything. And also the problems were becoming more complicated, and it required understanding the new technology coming down, understanding the dealers' challenges and problems, and what their end user problems were, and try to marry all that into coming up with what is the best product for us to come out with. So that team is truly Fred's legacy, and that's the team that we have working today, coming out with all of our new products and pushing that agenda and pushing us forward.
Dan Feldstein, thank you so much, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I look forward to many more of these conversations and see where you're taking things.
So do I.
All right. Dan Feldstein from Crestron. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv, and find more videos from the show floor of InfoComm 2021. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.